Hello everybody, welcome along. My name is Benjamin Bloom. This is the Benjamin Bloom Football Channel. Please leave your bias at the door. And everybody stay calm and strap yourself in. Because this video is called The Truth About Parachute Payments. Now, those of you who've watched our channel here covering the Championship will know that this has been a source of contention and much emotion and ranting and annoyance from myself and from the subscribers. So, beings things seem to be amping up in terms of the parachute payments conversation after the fan-led review, and we're hearing bits and bobs today. Things might actually be moving. I'm going to revisit the topic. I promise I'm going to do it calmly. So what I would love is if I can try and stay calm and balanced here, if you guys in the comments can try and do the same and we can have a really good discussion. What that means is that the emotional responses are not going to work, and I really, really need everyone commenting not to view football's finances through the prism of one club. You've got to look at it through the prism of 92 clubs, even further down if you want. We've got to look at the big picture here in order to have the right conversation. So let's talk about parachute payments. And the reason I say that is because the debate, like most things, well, frankly, on Twitter, where you can only write a couple of sentences, and in the football sphere, get very binary and very tribal. And what we tend to get with parachute payments is, on the one side, fans of the teams that don't have them say, scrap the parachute payments, get rid of them. That's not enough. That's not the conversation. There's another 50 steps and 50 things you need to say, because it's scrap them and then what? Okay, so I would hope we can go a little bit further in the debate. And let's be fair, and I always say don't hate the player, hate the game here. I'm not having a pop at fans of teams that have got parachute payments, but let's be honest, they're the only ones that argue for them. Frankly, who else would? It's turkeys and Christmas, isn't it? But they say relegated teams would go bust without them, which is very binary, and it's not true, obviously. If you remove the parachute payments, teams would plan accordingly. Obviously, as happened in 2001, 2002, if you let teams get relegated, budget, and then remove them, they'd all go into administration, because that's exactly what happened to my team, Ipswich, Leicester and Derby, when ITV Digital went bust. So we do know if you remove the money, the broadcast money mid-season, everyone goes into administration. So we get that, but again, it's not that simple, and we want to try and have a nuanced conversation about what essentially is the idea that the distribution of wealth in English football, particularly in the Championship, yes, we know in the Premier League there are the cliff edges as well, but it's ridiculous, isn't it? It is. Come on, let's be honest. If you went to work and you were doing roughly the same job as matey boy next to you, but they all of a sudden got 5 times more than you, that may cause some issues, mightn't it? So, what are parachute payments? So, if you don't know, I'm sure you do, they are payments paid to clubs relegated from the Premier League to the Championship. And yes, initially, they were a noble thing. The idea was, you're coming down from the Premier League makes loads more money than the Championship. Let's give you a little boost so you can mitigate the cliff edge. Fine. The problem is that the differential between the TV money and the two means that now, because those payments, as we're going to go on to, are a percentage of Premier League TV money, and that difference is so big that it's put another division in between Premier League money and Championship money. There's now parachute money, and you've kind of got 3 levels, which, okay, it does remove a cliff edge, just sticks another one in the gap, doesn't it? So they're paid across 3 seasons, so you get 55% Premier League TV money season 1, 45% season 2, 20% season 3. Remember, teams who are only up for 1 season only get the first 2 payments. Of course, if you get promoted back, those payments stop. It's a percentage of TV rights money, goes on the balance sheet as broadcast money. That is absolutely key here, because broadcast money is good FFP money. an example of bad FFP money is money that owners can just put in self-funded wealth, essentially, of clubs, if you think about it. Whereas parachute money, you can spend every penny of it on salary and on transfer fees. And I think you can see where the problem now arises with how the money actually ends up getting spent rather than its initial usage with what was planned. Designed to help clubs in the Premier League mitigate the big income drop when relegated from Premier League to the Championship. So I think we can all agree, in essence, the parachute payments were a noble idea designed to help. But what has happened is the Premier League TV money's gone like that, the Championship TV money's gone like that. The percentages being what they are have just added that extra cliff edge in the middle, and now there's a huge disparity in the Championship with the income and ability to spend of the parachute teams against the teams that don't have them. And then that causes the problems that we're about to discuss. So what's the problem? The payments create a big gap in broadcast income between Championship teams. A year one parachute team receives around 5 times more broadcast money than a non-parachute team. 5 times. And remember, the biggest payment any Championship team receives, providing they don't have a massively talented player that they can sell for 20 million quid, is the broadcast money. The big gap in revenue means non-parachute teams have to disproportionately outperform parachute teams tactically and in recruitment if parachute teams perform competently. So my argument, look, of course, you shouldn't just be able to easily go from 15th in the Championship to 2nd. You should have to work hard. Yes, I get that. But it shouldn't have to be disproportionately hard compared to the other teams. Yes, they should have an advantage if they've been in the Premier League. Yep, fine. We get all that. But let's make it proportional and reasonable. It shouldn't be a massive gamble. And what it seems to be is that you either have to have a lightning in a bottle season, i.e. Huddersfield, 16-17, Norwich 18-19, Sheffield United's 2 seasons, or you have to make a blooming big gamble, i.e. Wolves 17-18, Bournemouth 14-15, or you have to be really, really, really good for about 5 years in a row, i.e. Brentford last season. So we just want it to be a bit more of an even playing field where it, where the standard doesn't have to be either a ridiculous gamble or you have to be ridiculously good. Let's just make it a little bit more even, I think is what we're all saying. Promoted teams may be tempted to leverage their spending via parachute payments at Championship level rather than compete at Premier League level. Again, don't hate the player, hate the game here. And let's use our friends Norwich as an example, or even take QPR, who went 3rd last night in the Championship. If I'm Norwich or QPR and I've been in financial trouble, with the system as it is currently, if I'm getting promoted to the Premier League, am I going to spend all of the income I raise on about 3 players, frankly, or am I going to bank it, stabilise the club, become a dominant force at Championship level, leverage that advantage that I'm going to get when I come back down, and retool and try and get back up? Of course I'm going to do the latter. Unless it's a big, ride up where you think, okay, we've got a chance already. So I get it, but remember, those parachute payments were not initially thought up in terms of, if we just wait, we can use that money to spend on salary and spend on transfer fees. I don't think that was the initial plan. It was to mitigate having contracts to make you a competitive Premier League team and to be able to see them out across the 3 years that they might last. That just doesn't happen anymore, does it? Important dates. This is when I became massively irritated with parachute payments and thought, this is crazy. This is not a good system at all. So 2015-16, the EFL introduces a 3-year rolling £39 million loss limit. Clubs now rely on player trading and broadcast money. So that's when FFP really kicked in. And if you just add up the numbers, so you can lose £13 million per year. The year one parachute payment is £45 million. So essentially, a team that doesn't have parachute payments, their entire 3-year losses are covered by 1 year of a team that does have parachute payments. So we're talking a massive disparity in what clubs can and can't do financially. And for all of you people who are going to say, oh, spend within your means, wait until you see how much it costs everybody to get promoted. Nobody is spending within their means. But I think Rotherham made a profit 1 year. Yeah, they got relegated. So there you go. There's your spend within your means argument. Actually, we'll wait for Brentford's costs to come in for last season. We don't know them yet. That might be the one, mightn't it? 2016-17 is the other date there. Parachute payments are reduced from 4 years down to 3, meaning a faster injection of money rather than a slower drip effect. Look, you can view this 2 years. So, I don't know, say the money's 100 million quid. We all know spread over 4 years, things become a little bit less extreme, don't they? Clubs are, on that drip feed, less likely to gamble on that first year, etc., etc. And you know what it's like. You squeeze that up, the TV money goes up in the Premier League. We know the payment year one especially is linked to that TV money and is especially big. It just swelled it even more at that point. And we were turning the sand timer over, weren't we? And teams really felt, okay, we got 3 years to do this. Let's push and let's gamble. Let's spend. Push those wages up for everybody that doesn't have the payment. So here are the amounts. And I would challenge anybody who is pro-parachute payment, and you are allowed to be pro-parachute payment. I would say, okay, do you think the amounts are fair? What do you think the amount should be? Could we get fairer amounts? Here are some numbers from the excellent Swiss Ramble Twitter account there. You can see if we go extreme and take top and bottom, Norwich there, that is 2019-2020, received £49 million broadcast money. Blackburn at the bottom received £6.8 million broadcast money. So there you go. I said a few slides back, 5 times more broadcast money. That sounds like 6 times more broadcast money than me. So, in simple terms, Norwich received income there. And let's not pick on Norwich. Again, don't hate the player, hate the game. Huddersfield there, 44 million. Fulham, 43 million as well. West Brom, Swansea and Cardiff on their year 2 payments. All 40 million, 39, 36 million. You can see it in the graph, for God's sake. I don't need to explain the numbers. Big line, small line. But, yeah, just an incredible disparity. The example I'd give is if you take 20 people and tell them they've all got to go and buy a house, but you're going to give 3 people 6 times more money than the others. You tell me what that does in terms of a distortion and in terms of making it very difficult for the others. You can see the revenues there in total. Okay, that's when it can even out a little bit. You've got the likes of Derby. Okay, there might be stadium sales there and whatnot. Bristol City, Nottingham Forest, managing to close up. You can see traditionally the slightly bigger clubs who create more commercial revenues, etc., etc. And your example there, Bristol City or Brentford, ones that buy and sell very well, can close the gap a little bit. Pretty hard work though, isn't it? And there you go. Look at the wage bills, for God's sake. Fulham, 73 million. Barnsley, and this is absolutely incredible because the following season they're going to get in the playoffs. So Barnsley's wage bill was 11 million without a parachute payment, just promoted from League One, in fact. Fulham's was 73 million. So well over, we're talking about multiples of 6, aren't we? Norwich's TV revenue 6 times more than Blackburn's. And that equates Fulham's wage bill 6 times more than Barnsley. So you can see, if you have the parachute payments, you can, you can push the envelope a little bit, can't you? The effect on promotion, I do and don't like these arguments because, let's be honest, judging things by who gets promoted is a little bit binary, and I was complaining that about the start, but ultimately, that is the goal, isn't it? To get up and get that 100 million quid TV money in the Premier League on a regular basis. There are things outside of promotion, i.e. the distortion and the general inflation in wages and transfer fees that are not figured into who gets promoted or not. But let's look at the big picture and just remember, in a lot of seasons, there are 8 teams with parachute payments, 7 teams with parachute payments. So by definition, for those of you that expected it to be 90% of teams with that are promoted have parachute payments, remember, if there are 7 teams with parachute payments, only 3 can get promoted. There's always going to be more teams that have them that don't. But also, remember, if there are 7 teams with parachute payments, still another 17 who haven't got them. Yeah, and we've got to think big picture here. Anyway, so 8 out of the last 15 teams promoted have had parachute payments in that season. So I'll judge it as in that season. Obviously, you know, money doesn't just run out in one season. Depends how you budget it, doesn't it? 5 out of the last 10 top 2 teams had them that season. So 50% of the teams that have been automatically promoted in the last 5 years had a parachute payment. That's those top 2 positions. We're talking a very small sample size here. 17 out of the last 30 top 6 teams. So there is a domination. Remember when you're looking at these numbers and thinking, oh, that's just over 50%. Remember, only 3 teams out of 24 get them each season. It's then, you know, it runs when teams don't get promoted and we have more teams have them. So just remember your numbers there. So teams that got promoted without, you can see Brighton and Huddersfield in 16-17. We'll go into detail on these teams in a minute. Wolves 17-18, Norwich 18-19, and Sheffield United that season. Leeds in 19-20 and Brentford in 2021. So you can see over the last 2 seasons it's been particularly bad. Only 2 out of 6 teams have managed to get promoted without parachute payments. In the last 5 years, 120 teams have competed in the Championship, 38 with parachute payments, 86 without, 21% of parachute teams get promoted, 12% of non-parachute teams get promoted. We'll look at the reasons why in a minute, but you can see roughly you've got twice as much chance getting promoted with the parachute payment as without. Says that very binary statistic. Let's move on. Getting up without. So here are the seven teams that did it without in the last 5 years. That is since FFP's been there and the payment's only been spread over 3 years. So Brentford, we don't have the financial results for Brentford, who managed to do it last season. I've put there, raised huge amounts from player sales. I think Brentford are our remedy, aren't they? They basically planned for the parachute world. Got rid of the reserve team, really leveraged transfers, used data, recruited, built up that recruitment. And what did Brentford manage to do? They managed to get the equivalent money of parachute payments in player sales every year. So you have to say, well done, Brentford. And they found the remedy before everybody else. But I would say again about Brentford, they had to be really good for about 5 years in a row before they managed to. They were losing playoff finalists and then won the next season as well. So Leeds 1920 lost £62 million. And this is going to come up, £20 million in bonuses. So this is another thing parachute apologists say, oh, Ben, those loss figures factor in promotion bonuses. Yeah, of course they do. So what these clubs do is they say to the player, who they're going to sign on a higher wage than they really should do, if you go up, I don't know what it would be, we'll pay you 3 months' wages in one go. And that turned out to be a £20 million bonus there for Leeds. That was the COVID season, wasn't it? So no gate receipts or far less commercials for Leeds, who really pushed well in that regard. And Leeds' strategy, what did they do? Hired a world-class manager, paid him a lot of money, and played some really good football over 2 years. Norwich, 18-19. Norwich are a very interesting one for the third reason I put there, because they're the one team that's done it the season after the parachute payments run out. So Norwich were clever. They had 8 years' worth of Premier League TV payments, over seasons in the Premier League, and parachute payments bouncing back up with them. And they managed to do a very clever restructuring the season before, bringing in Daniel Farker and Stuart Webber for their last season of parachute payments. Again, a big player sale, James Mattheson. And there is a certain extent with Norwich, a lightning in a bottle as well. They went from 14th place to first place. So I think they're an interesting one at Norwich there. But the loss is still £39 million. We think about £11 million in bonuses there. So still a huge cost of promotion for a team we think that did a pretty good job, and it still creates a huge loss. This is the broken system we're dealing with. Sheffield United, £21 million losses. Again, we'd call them lightning in a bottle, wouldn't we? Promoted from League one season, and then finished second the next season there behind Norwich. And yeah, £21 million losses. We don't know exactly how much the bonuses. I seem to be working out about 8 to 10 million. So I think our cost of promotion might be, and they might be close to Huddersfield, who we talk about in a minute. But you'd say Sheffield United, lightning in a bottle, really good tactically, did it on the pitch, didn't they? So you would say take a bow, but even them, huge losses still that we don't want to see. For all of you people arguing, spend within your means. Well, okay, I think Sheffield United done a pretty good job and still lost 21 million quid getting promoted. Wolves, I mean, what do you say? 55 million quid losses. What did Wolves do? Got George Mendes, spent a ton of money, gambled, and then they were out of jurisdiction when FFP came. Did it in one season. £20 million bonus, still going to lose 35 million quid though. Brighton, 38.9 million losses in 16-17. We think 9 million bonuses, but again, still the thick end of 30 million quid in losses to get promoted without parachute payments. Huddersfield are probably our kings of this. Lightning in a bottle season there, just jumped up and got promoted, won the playoffs, didn't they? 19 million losses. We think 11 million bonuses. So you have to say well done, Huddersfield, who've got the lowest loss. But again, for all you spend within your means people, Huddersfield, who are our heroes here, still take away the bonuses if you think that that's the right thing to do. Still lost about 10 million quid, didn't they? Or 10 million quid. So again, even Huddersfield, our kings, did not spend within their means. It's impossible if you're getting the idea. The big gamble. These are our teams. So this is the effect of parachute payments, whereby you get this distortion. Wages go up, salaries go up. There may be 7 or 8 teams getting 4, 5, 6 times as many broadcast money, and teams can either spend within their means or try and compete. Obviously, Sheffield United, Huddersfield, Norwich, etc., Brentford managed to find a way of competing and get over the line. All of them, although we don't know Brentford's results yet, still losing a boatload of cash. These are the teams that tried, got to the playoff final. In Reading's instance, lost on penalties. I don't know if there's any extra time in the other games. No, there wasn't, was there? So these people were one game away. So you would say they did the gamble and they got pretty darn close. One game away. But what happens? Derby lost in the playoff final, 18-19, lost to Aston Villa. Amortisation, stadium sale, administration, and they're probably going down this season. They gambled, they did not get up, and they're probably going to be relegated to League One this season. 21-point deduction. Reading lost on penalties in the playoff final. They've struggled since. Stadium sale, sanction this year, 6 points deduction as well. Suspended 6 points next season. They're got to work with the EFL on their spending now. Gambled and failed. Sheffield Wednesday, 15-16, got to the playoff finals, lost, stole the stadium, FFP, points deduction, relegated last season. So these are the teams that tried, and let's not, if you're a fan of one of the teams that got up with a £30 million loss, there's only one game difference between you and these teams. Okay, a few of them were automatically promoted, weren't they? So fair dues, but you can see we talked about a cliff edge. You can see the knife edge of that playoff final, what it costs to get there. And then if you don't get up, you are screwed. Okay, we do need to give Brentford some credit. They lost in the playoff final and won the next year. Villa lost in the playoff final, won the next playoff final. But we know how much money they spent as well. Middlesbrough, I can see the other losing playoff finalist there in 14-15, slightly before. And Middlesbrough are an interesting one that are going to come up in the next part. Because these are our not taking advantage teams. And parachute apologists have often argued back to me, but Ben, what about the teams that had parachute money and didn't get promoted? My argument back to that is not every advantage in life is taken. Yes, it doesn't mean the advantage is not there. The analogy I always give is you can challenge me to a race from London to Newcastle in a car. And if you give me a 2-hour head start, but I spend the first 3 hours in the cinema, I did not have an advantage. I just didn't take the advantage, okay? So there are teams, and that doesn't prove the rule, I don't think, if teams don't take advantage. The advantage is clearly still there. You've still got way more money than everybody else. There you go, 16-17, Sunderland. Well, that's easy. Ellis Short wanted out. He pocketed all the parachute money. Sunderland got relegated with parachute payments because they were essentially used as Ellis Short's get out. And we know what the new owners of Sunderland were like, and they're still in League One. Middlesbrough, okay, there's one where, and maybe Middlesbrough fans will argue, but Steve Gibson's still trying to sue Derby. They only had a 2-year parachute window, didn't they? Because they were only up for 1 season, so that makes a difference. Lost in the playoffs to Aston Villa, and I'm sure they will argue that Aston Villa completely bust FFP to beat them, and then missed out to Derby. And they will also argue that missing out was the result of other people massively overspending. Villa overspent and got up. Derby overspent and didn't. So there's Middlesbrough for you. Hull, well, they got relegated, didn't they? The Alarms obviously had the parachute money, didn't really want to push too hard and leverage. And here's one for you spend within your means absolutists. Hull spent within their means, didn't they? Banked the parachute money, tried to make a profit, the Alarms, got relegated. That's what happens if you spend within your means, I think. Stoke and Swansea in 17-18 is an interesting one. Stoke would probably be the poster boys for having parachute money and failing, because they spent a lot on Benica Phobie and Tom Ince, had Gary Rowett and then Nathan Jones and now Michael O'Neill. They're the ones you would say tried to leverage that money, spent and failed, didn't they? Still in the Championship, still quite high up though. Swansea, I think Swansea fans would argue they didn't really gamble the parachute money. Graham Potter finished, 10th or 12th or something, didn't they? Steve Cooper, twice in the playoffs, including once in the playoff final, and then now retooling. Did they really leverage and spend in the way a lot of these teams have? No, they didn't. No, the main thing at Swansea is players going out. Dan James, Ollie McBurney, even this season. Connor Roberts, Joe Rodden. They've sold most of their players, not invested. Hardly, have they? So, Huddersfield and Cardiff. Again, Huddersfield were another one where the parachute money was used to leverage a takeover, wasn't it? That was the out for, what was his name? Dean Hoyle. So they had the parachute, but didn't spend it. It was used to as the get out, like for Ellis Short. Huddersfield didn't go down, but they were right down the bottom, weren't they? They're now retooling under Carlos Corberan. Cardiff, again, like Middlesbrough, only had 2 years of the payment, which seems to make a difference, doesn't it? But they didn't manage to get up. And again, a litany of managers as well. Maybe I need to do the research, but there's definitely something in teams that have parachute payments and don't sack their managers, because obviously Warnock went, Harris went, got to playoffs, didn't they? Missed out, and then missed out on the playoffs under McCarthy at the end of last season, and now struggling without. Last season, Bournemouth didn't get up with a year one parachute payment. Again, sacked the manager, Tyndall, Woodgate, Parker this season. They're in the top two. So let's not rule out Bournemouth being another team that do get promoted with parachute payments. And again, they've got 3 years worth. The solution. Well, there's plenty. There's plenty to say here. I've just put down a few ideas with question marks. Scrapping the parachute payments. I don't think that's the solution. If you do scrap them, you need to come up with a more equitable way of dividing the money, don't you? Giving the relegated teams less. You could give the relegated teams less. Are the percentages too high? Probably. Then, I know the argument you're going to get. You are then increasing the cliff edge between the Championship and the Premier League. So yes, the Championship would become more competitive, but would anybody actually be able to stay up when they did get up? I know people will come back and say, Ben, parachute money is not for the Premier League. You get 10 times more TV money, spend that. But remember, you're going against teams who've been in there for 5 or 10 years. They've got an entire squad of players who they spent 20 million, 30 million quid on, and no one's spending 2 million quid in the Championship. So I get the argument. Giving the rest more, I mean, this is the one, isn't it? Can you even everything out? If you're going to give, what was it, Norwich 48 million quid TV money, don't give Blackburn 6.8 million. 7.8 million? I don't know. Raise the gap, spread the TV money. There's a big pot of money, and we all know that 90% of it goes to 3 teams in the EFL. So can you even it out a little bit more? Send it down the pyramid. Yes, I do understand that any team down at the bottom of the Premier League is going to try and block that because they want that advantage to try and bounce back. That's why we have to look at the big picture here and not view it through the prism of one club. You've got to look at it through 92 clubs, else the discussion is just frankly too racked with self-interest to be credible. Controlling the usage. I've heard this argument plenty of times. Oh, Ben, pay the parachute money, but it has to be there has to be a business plan, and it has to be spent on contracts that were signed in the Premier League. So then we understand the money was spent in trying to survive the Premier League, not to just cheat code the Championship. Maybe there's some sense in that. It gets very complex very quickly, and the likes of me, who aren't super intelligent accountants, may not understand. There might be something in that. Salary caps and spending controls, that might be the big picture thing. But I personally believe we need, well, I'll come to a single controlling entity when I get to salary caps, etc. Reworking of FFP. I personally believe that FFP and parachute payments are in complete contradiction at the moment. How can you say to one team you can have a 3-year rolling loss of 39 million, 13 million a year, yet pay another team 45 million quid when you're paying one 6.8? It feels just so grossly unfair that one team's maximum losses, another team gets paid 3 times more than that in 1 year, and the maximum losses go. It's too far apart. I get maybe the maximum losses are right. 13, maybe it needs to be less. I don't know, but you can't have, on the one hand, you can only lose 13 million whilst we're going to pay another team 45 million in the same division. Yes, it might be the right thing for both those clubs in isolation, but put the two together and it's an absolute bloody madness, isn't it? A more even distribution down the pyramid. Very easy for me to sit and say that, but that's the answer, isn't it? It needs to be that, yes, Manchester City, Liverpool, Chelsea, they deserve the most money. They're the top teams. We get it. Fine. I don't know, Scunthorpe, Grimsby, whoever, down the bottom, not picking on those teams. Yeah, they don't deserve to get as much as Manchester City and Liverpool. But at the moment, it goes dup, dup, like that. Even if it went a curve like that, that would be better. Obviously, we'd love a nice straight line down, an actual pyramid rather than some awful steps and cliff edges. That's got to be the way forward. And that's why I say a single controlling entity. This is the big problem, isn't it? That you've got the 20 teams at the top who make an absolute shed load of money, and then you've got the 72. And I get it. The 20 teams are looking after themselves. They're keeping all the cash. The 72 are struggling below. The 20 say, yeah, but we give 3 teams a load of money every year in parachute payments. It just needs a more even spread. And frankly, even if we had a Premier League 2 and it was, what would it be, 44 teams rather than 20 and then 72, would that make it more even? I get the argument, okay, Ben, fine, whatever, you're just moving the cliff edge down and the gap then goes between League 1 and Premier League 2 or whatever it would be named. But it does feel like a huge problem is the fact we have one entity for the top 20 and a different entity for everyone else. The same entity surely would make a more even distribution, wouldn't they? Be madness not to. A complete overhaul of the systems in English football. Well, maybe that's what's coming with the fan-led review. And that's my last slide here. Change coming. Is a change coming? Look, that's Kieran Maguire, who's good on this stuff. Retweeting an article from The Guardian there. Premier League and EFL in secret talks to remove parachute payments. That broke yesterday. Remember what I said at the top of the show. That can't be the end of the discussion. Oh, we're going to remove parachute payments. Bosh. Well, if you do that and you don't change anything else, yes, the Championship gets more competitive, but the cliff edge is then just literally between position 21 in the pyramid and 20, isn't it? It needs to be a huge, overarching kind of rejigging of the distribution of wealth right down the pyramid. So I'm really passionate about saying this. I believe in freedom of speech. And if you want to write in the comments, scrap the parachute payments, fine. But that's the tip of the iceberg. That's part one of a 20-part conversation. What I need to hear from you is, and then what? Scrap them, and then what? I suppose, in essence, I think they should be scrapped. But it's then, what do you replace them with? That's the real devil in the detail, isn't it? You can see on the right there, that's the fan-led review. I was kind of pleased. I know some people have sneered at the fan-led review from Tracy Crouch. I was kind of pleased when I read it because basically the page on parachute payments, it pretty much said exactly what I've been saying in the discussion we've been having, i.e. they were a noble idea, but the distortion now in between teams that have them, teams that don't, the cliff edge, has just got ludicrous, hasn't it, in the Championship? And I'm glad the world is kind of coming round to that. So there you go. That is the truth about parachute payments. A long ramble. Hopefully, I've been nice and balanced. And I really, really do want to get your comments on this. But please bear in mind that over the years, I've got very fed up with the debate because I get these two binary responses. Fans of teams that don't have them. And yes, I have every sympathy. I support Ipswich. Ipswich tried year after year to go against the parachute teams and not make too much of a loss. And they're in League One now. I get it. I get the system sucks, frankly, if you don't have them. But if your answer is scrap parachute payments, I need a bit more than that. And to be fair to the teams that do have them and the teams in the Premier League, there does need to be scrap them and then redistribute this way. And for you fans of teams that have them, again, we're not having a go at your clubs. We're really, really not. Don't hate the player, hate the game. I get it. I would do exactly what certain clubs that have gone up and retooled and bounced. For God's sake, Charlton and West Brom were lauded in the early part of the century for doing what essentially, let's name Norwich and Fulham and West Brom have been able to do the bouncing in recent seasons. So it can't be enough to just say relegated teams would go bust without them or you can't challenge. Yeah, fine, we get that. It becomes more difficult. But look at the effect they're currently having. They don't work. This is the simplistic answer. Parachute payments do not work. Simply because to get promoted without them, everybody's losing a boatload of cash. We need a system where you should be able to be competitive and be financially viable at the same time. That's the whole point. The system at the moment, you can't get promoted without losing a ton of money. Yeah? It's a gamble and it's all very well. People going, no, Reading, Sheffield Wednesday, Derby. Let's be quite frank. All the teams that we applaud, Norwich in 18-19, Huddersfield in 16-17, Sheffield United, Brentford, Leeds. We applauded all them. We said, well done, you got up without parachute payments. They all had to lose a ton of money to do it as well. So it's a completely broken system. Anyway, I said I wouldn't get emotional and passionate about it, but I have done at the end, and we've gone nearly 40 minutes. All I want is a system where a team in the Championship with some good recruitment, a good manager, some good players and some good tactics has a chance of going against the teams that maybe a bit bigger than them, bigger clubs, without having to lose a boatload of cash and gamble their future and maybe end up where plenty of teams in League One have tried and failed. There we go. Get your comments in. The truth about parachute payments. Let's try and make it a nice, good debate in the comments. Let's get some reason, some balance, some nuance. And if you're only considering the team you support in this discussion, your comment doesn't have much credibility. I really, really need, and football really needs the discussion to be about 92 teams, not 20 rich teams in the Premier League, not one team who you want to support, who you want to see get in the Premier League. 92. Protect the bloody 92 teams and talk about all of them, please, in the comments. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I'm going to go and calm the hell down having talked about that. And it's a lovely big over and out from me. Thank you for watching. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button to see more videos from this channel. Hit the subscribe button and to be notified every time we upload. Ring the bell for those notifications to come through on your device. If you really want to support the channel and me as a content creator, I will be eternally grateful if you head over to the merch store and grab something, or support over on Patreon, patreon.com/Benjamin Bloom. Thank you for your time. Go and watch another